So this is Unit 3, Activity 1, and this activity is looking at the creators of fashion, both internationally and here in Canada. So I want you to think about the word designer and what images come to your mind. Does the face of your favorite designer come to your head, or does the latest ensemble come there? Although many designers are not internationally renowned, there are many designers who work in the fashion industry. So they're kind of the unsung heroes of fashion. So how would you define designer in your head? One of the definitions that we see is a person who's employed to develop concepts and create ideas for both garments and accessories in the fashion industry. So in other words, designers get paid to develop designs for clothing that will be sold to a specific market segment. So remember in Unit 1 where we learned that there are 3 industry levels, couture, ready-to-wear, and mass production. Essentially, designers are guided by the elements and principles of design, and they create these designs, choose fabrics, notions, embellishments, and use appropriate construction techniques to transform their ideas from 2-dimensional paper, as you see here, to 3-dimensional reality. So some specific tasks of a designer's job include researching trends. They might talk to a fashion forecaster, do some comparative shopping, attend trade shows, fabric fairs, etc. They need to pay careful attention to media, music, and other current events that might dictate fashion trends. They need to know how to illustrate ideas, concepts, and themes. They need to create storyboards and product ranges. They need to draw up spec sheets for costing and sampling of a line. They need to source fabric and trimmings. They also work with a pattern drafter or cutter and machinists. They need to approve the samples once they're created, and they need to visit the manufacturers regarding the production of their line. It's not uncommon for a designer to specialize in designing for one product area. For example, you might be a designer specifically of bridal wear or specifically of eyewear. These women's apparel classifications from Unit 1, Activity 3 all have to do with that. So to be successful, a designer must focus their designs and fabrications on the market segment for which they're designing. The bottom line for a designer is measured in sales volume. That basically means they need to sell lots. So they mix up the elements of design in new and exciting ways to create new trends and ultimately increase consumer spending. All of their design decisions are guided by the market level for which they're designing. And product that doesn't sell is extremely costly to them because they need to make it and they need to spend money on it, but then they're not getting that return. So, Donna Karan's first collection in 1985 took the fashion world by storm. She focused on the 7 easy pieces. These pieces included skirts, tops, and bodysuits, which work together. So you might have also heard of this nowadays being phrased as the capsule wardrobe, having fewer high-end pieces that can go together. So Donna Karan kind of coined this, but this idea is still relevant today in 2017. So we're just going to review the designers and industry levels. We've already talked about couture, ready-to-wear, and mass production. And although designers who are self-employed, such as Donna Karan and Ralph Lauren, or design house designers like Karl Lagerfeld for Chanel, they design at the couture and ready-to-wear levels of the industry, but they also work for manufacturers in a mass production capacity. In other words, a lot of designers work for an apparel manufacturer that produces clothing for a specific store label or brand. So this could be the Bay, this could be Nordstrom. Some mass production designers create original designs and garment lines that the manufacturing company can produce, while others adapt and reinterpret couture and ready-to-wear designs that allow manufacturers to produce less expensive knockoffs. In the industry, these designers are sometimes referred to as stylists. In mass production, costs are cut by eliminating production details in the design or selecting less expensive fabrications, detailing, or constructive techniques. In other words, the design is deconstructed to its lowest common denominator to be cheaper. Licensing is also something we need to consider. It means giving legal permission to use your name to promote a product. In return, a percentage of the profit, called a royalty, is given to the designer or celebrity or sports figure whose name is being used. So in other words, manufacturers buy the rights to use a specific name in the anticipation of making money. So think about it. Have you ever bought perfume that carries the name of a fashion designer, celebrity, or sports figure? What about accessories such as jewelry, leather goods, shoes, or handbags? Licensing provides for the market moderately priced items which carry a designer's name, and this will appeal to a broader audience. What's interesting is that licensing has become a major source of profit for these fashion designers and couture houses. Let's hone in on Canadian fashion. What comes to mind when you think of Canadian fashion? How many Canadian designers can you list off the top of your head? For example, did you know that Jeremy Lang is a Canadian designer who freelanced for Alexander McQueen? And he's made tremendous impacts on New York runways over the past 6 seasons. Although most people have heard of Alfred Sung, Simon Chang, Linda Lundstrom, Pink Tartan, and Joe Fresh, as well as a mentor, Brian Bailey on the Project Runway Canada, and Mr. Glamour Wayne Clark, you might be hard-pressed to find a Canadian who could name 10 Canadian fashion designers. However, naming 10 American or international designers would probably come flying off the tip of their tongues. For example, Yves Saint Laurent, who's an internationally known French designer, he won the prestigious Designer of the World Award in 1978. But little do Canadians know that Saint Laurent won this award alongside John Warden, who was a Montreal-based Canadian designer. More people know Yves Saint Laurent's brand than John Warden's, even here in Canada. So if you browse through the fashion section of your local bookstore, you'll probably find lots of books which focus on American and international designers. But would you find books that focus on Canadian fashion and designers? Probably not. So, what is Canadian fashion and Canadian style? Try and experiment and ask your friends and family to define or explain what Canadian fashion or Canadian style is. You might find their responses both interesting and enlightening. You might get products such as the Hudson's Bay blanket, the Hudson's Bay coat, the RCMP uniform, plaid shirts, Sorel boots, or more vague examples such as Canadian fashion is an eclectic melting pot. So, Jeremy Lang said it well when he said that Canadian fashion is sort of undefined. It can be whatever we make it, which is exciting. I want to focus in on one company, which I still see on the street today, which is Sorel. Sorel boots are a Canadian boot, and they've been a trend off and on since 2009. Marc Jacobs even used this boot as a source of inspiration for his own Fall 2009 footwear collection, when Sorel boots were in the height of their popularity. One of the things that Sorel produces is called the Sorelington. Do you know what the design inspiration was for this boot? Have you heard of the British Wellington? Well, this boot, the Wellington, was originally named after Arthur Wellesley, the first Duke of Wellington. Wellesley asked his shoemaker to fashion such a boot in 1817. So this was a boot that was traditionally worn by military and farmers, and now it's a fashion trend. You might even own a pair of hunter boots, which are a perfect example of a British Wellington. There are many images of fashion icons such as Kate Moss wearing British hunter boots. Not only has the Canadian manufacturer Sorel been inspired by the British hunter boot, so has Joe Fresh. So the next time you visit the superstore, you might see interpretations of either Sorel or British Wellingtons in their stores. So still focusing in on Canada, now we're going to focus in on the Design Council. So the Canadian fashion industry has been working hard to give a face to Canadian fashion. The FDCC is a national organization, and it's dedicated to branding fashion in Canada. In this capacity, the organization promotes Canadian fashion design talent. It links buyers with designers. It gives the media the information buzz that it needs. And it also helps business execs find products that they're looking for. This is the organization that's responsible for the production of Fashion Week. And Fashion Week in Toronto is held twice a year, in the spring and in the fall. Here are a couple of other aspects of Canadian fashion that you may or may not be familiar with. So from a media perspective, City TV's Fashion Television has been the innovator and forefront of fashion reporting for decades. So this program's brought fashion names, both Canadian and international, into the Canadian home. There was also a fashion TV show called Fashion File, but it's no longer being produced. So City TV is pretty much all you've got. You can check out City TV online and see what they've been reporting more recently. Another thing that Canadian fashion has to offer is Project Runway. And Brian Bailey's been instrumental in bringing Canadian fashion into the home. So it's been focusing on refreshing the average Canadian with a breadth of knowledge, passion, time, and commitment, and showing them how much it takes to produce a garment line. It's also been instrumental in making Canadians aware that there really is a fashion industry in this country. So, for example, Season 2 winner Sunny Fong and Season 1 winner Evan Bedell all have shown up at Toronto Fashion Week. So you can look on streaming services or look for episodes of Project Runway if you're more interested in this. Finally, the Toronto Fashion Incubator is the first official fashion incubator in the world. So maybe you don't know what a fashion incubator is, which is totally okay. It was established to nurture and support Canadian fashion designers. It began way back in 1986 when people in Toronto realized that the fashion industry was the second largest employer in the city of Toronto. So how do they help keep that going? The FILC, the Fashion Industry Liaison Committee, is a volunteer industry organization, and it's supported by the city. It saw the need to stimulate business growth and ensure the vitality of this industry since it was very important to Toronto. So 2 decades later, the TFI mission of nurturing and developing innovative talent has been modeled in cities all over the world. So fashion hubs such as London, LA, Melbourne have looked at the TFI and used it to help their cities and help nurture their designers. So like our kind of national psyche, Canadians are very quiet and understated about their style, talent, and achievements in the field of fashion. We don't really like to brag, but I hope that this module has shown you that Canadians do have something to offer in terms of fashion, and it's in your best interest to check it out. So the last thing we're going to do is pop into the Fashion Museum. The Fashion Museum is going to give us a little bit more background about the creators of fashion.